Hello and welcome to the Sound Without Sight podcast. You've just been listening to Larchie, a musician, producer, CEO, and all-round disability icon, and we're very lucky to welcome her as our guest in this episode. Larchie shares insights into her career journey so far, her organisation, Ramped, the process of writing her first book, and her approaches to songwriting and music production. This podcast was recorded live at a Sound Without Sight webinar in January 2026. If you're listening to the audio-only podcast, there's also a video version on YouTube. We hope you enjoy.
Hey everybody, I'm Larchie. I am a Black woman with cornrows. I identify as blind and neurodivergent. I am based here in New York City, New York. I am in my studio at the moment, and I also identify as Aries. So do with that what you will. I am a recording artist and songwriter, and I've had the pleasure of working with names like Marcus Schultz and Armin van Buuren, if you've heard of those, Apple de App of the Black Eyed Peas, have done some work with Alicia Keys, and also my organization and her organization have done tons of work together. I've had the opportunity to co-write with Snoop Dogg and Styles P and others in the hip hop arena. And as a performer, I've had the opportunity to sort of perform around the globe and speak as well on disability inclusion and advocacy all over sort of different continents and different countries. And it's just been quite the blast. I am also on the National Board of Trustees at the Recording Academy, who runs the Grammys, which has also been a tool for me to advocate for inclusion at some of the highest levels within the music industry. I have been a PBS host for a series called Renegades, which amplifies disabled heroes in America. And last, but certainly not least, I am the CEO and founder of an organization called Ramped, Recording Artists and Music Professionals with Disabilities. And Ramped is a consultancy and training group that consults with the music, sound, and audio industries on how to be more accessible, inclusive, and as well, Ramped is a global network of music professionals and creators with disabilities, neurodivergence, chronic conditions, and mental health conditions. And then I'm also an author with a new book out, which I know we'll talk about, as well as I run a fashion line called Glam Canes. Please don't ask me when I sleep, because I really am embarrassed about what the answer is or isn't. But that's me, and I go by Larchie, like Versace.
Wow, so you've done a lot. If we go right back to the beginning, how did you decide that you wanted to get into music, and who were the musical influences in your life who you think have shaped you as an artist?
When I was super young, actually my mother said that while other babies were kicking against the womb, I was playing the piano in the womb as a baby. I don't know how she got a piano in there, but she's not a liar. So I was always into music at a very, very young age. And, being legally blind, partially blind, my mom thought I was going to be this sort of classical genius savant. So she got me Chopin, Mozart, Beethoven when I was super young, and I would play those by ear. So that has definitely influenced me. But of course, there have been really some deep-rooted influences in sort of the R&B, hip-hop, pop, and electronic worlds. Everyone from Alicia Keys, who I eventually got the honor to meet and work with, as well as Missy Elliott or Lauryn Hill. But then, my brothers were very punk rock. So we listened to a lot of rock in the house as well. So everything from Smashing Pumpkins. I don't know if you guys are going to know some of these names, but just a very large, wide, broad influence. And I think what really connected it was me. I wanted to hear voices that felt that they weren't being heard. So I was always really drawn to songs and lyrics of somebody saying, hey, I have something to say. Why aren't you listening? I know that I'm worth something. And those tended to be the themes in a lot of my songs as well.
I think that really shows in your music, because the portfolio of songs that you have, it is quite vast in genre. They're all quite bold, if that makes sense. And I was just wondering, in terms of your creative process, has there been anything that you've enjoyed creating the most, or that you've really felt encompasses you, like an album or a song in particular?
Sure. When I was much younger, I was writing songs and producing songs that were about, self advocacy and really trying to say, hey, I belong. Why won't anyone accept me? Things like that. Today, I'm singing songs that are very just badass, very in your face, very, I don't care if you think I'm an underdog and you want to underestimate me. I am still going to win. And the bus is just going to drive right by you. Okay. So you either getting on or you're not. And I think that those songs came with my confidence. I feel like if I was going to say a couple songs that fit it, I have a song called Life on Hard, which is essentially a song that says, I'm winning the game of life on hard while everyone else is still kind of consulting the manual. It's a song about being proud of being blind and neurodivergent and being able to do all of the cool things I do. I have another song called The Bag, which is also a more recent song. And they're raps, by the way. They're like electronic dance music with rap on top. And it really says, I deserve everything. You can tell me no, but I know I deserve yes. And that song went super mega viral over the summer. And SZA, I don't know if you know her, but she's just a sort of a big R&B person, gave me so many props for that song. And I was like, you know who I am? So yeah, I think though, just to answer your question, when I was much younger, I was much more shy. I was really insecure and felt a lot of shame because of my blindness and because of my neurodivergence, right? But then as I grew up and as I got more confident in my production and my songwriting and got into bigger and better rooms and started working with bigger and better names and people were calling me on the phone to work with them, my confidence went up. And now today I'm super duper confident, but I'm still blind and neurodivergent. And I had this epiphany that was like, it was never the blindness or the neurodivergence that was the source of shame. It was everything else. And so that's why I've dedicated sort of my life and my platform, showing to people that it's not the condition, it's the conditioning that's actually the problem.
I think like that's really interesting. And it's made me wonder, like, do you think once you came to accept your condition, you, in a sense, got to do more because you felt confident in what you were doing and you could put yourself out there as you?
Absolutely. I think that, everyone is kind of masking because everybody's just so afraid of judgment and afraid of everything else. And I think people are afraid of being pathologized. To be pathologized is, maybe being seen as weak or seen as needing help or pitied or whatever. And everyone's so afraid of that they hide behind all these masks. But I feel that hiding is our own true prison. Like at the end of the day, all of our internalized ableism, our internalized shame. And so when we peel off that mask and we are actually liberated for the first time, that's when we get to access the inner visionary that we truly are. And so I feel like what happened with me was that I finally started peeling off the mask. And, it was actually because it wasn't even because I was like, oh my God, we need to have more access. It was actually because when I was getting into those better rooms, right, I started thinking to myself like, oh my God, I'm being invited to do a writing session at Sony Music. Like, I need to do my best. And the only way I can do my best is actually if I'm accommodated. And so I have to tell them what's wrong. So I have to say it and then ask for the accommodations. And it wasn't, I wasn't like banging down the door and having a picket sign and saying, how dare you? It was very much like, hey, I really want to do my best. And for me to do my best, here are the things I need. And I started to do better because I was coming out. So it was actually better for my career. And that made my confidence better because that was why I started getting better calls, because my work was getting better, because I was being accommodated, my voice was being heard. And eventually I got to a point where I was using my cane because I was not even, I don't know how many other people in here use a cane and at one point was embarrassed about using a cane. But when I was younger, I was super embarrassed about using the cane. But when I was older, I would be invited to these dark galas and all these fancy rooms. And I couldn't get around, or people wouldn't speak to me, or people would think I was standoffish because I wasn't waving back. And then I would lose a deal. I remember I lost the ability to get signed onto this big tour because a guy waved me over to his table and he didn't know I was legally blind and I didn't wave back. So I was like, okay, that's not happening again. So I started to use my cane, but if I'm going to go to a fancy ballroom, I'm going to have a fancy ball cane. If I'm going to have this big badass attitude, I'm going to have a big badass cane. And so I started bejeweling my canes, which also added to my confidence. And so I don't know if you guys have heard of glam canes, but that's me. I'm the one that does glam canes. So we have these bejeweled glam canes. And really what it is me combating my own erasure that I was perpetuating by not using the cane. Because now people come up to me, people say hello to me, and they also get a dose of, well, she uses a cane and she's fly as heck. So obviously the fact that she uses a cane is not an issue.
Do you think like once you started to accommodate yourself more and to put those things in place to make your workflow easier, people began to see you more as a musician because you put those accommodations in place to make sure that people actually understood what was going on?
I want to say yes and no at the same time. Because I remember when I first came out of college, I had a day job. And while I was at that day job, I actually got signed to a major label, which was nice. So I was like, bye, and threw the printer out the window. But no, so I got signed to this major label. Now, here's the problem. You know, if you're a young kid and you get signed to a major label, you're like, oh my God, I am now ready to enter the world. I have the best life. Well, that wasn't necessarily the case for me. I got signed and they started to promote me as like the blind singer, right? And I had a band and everyone in my band also had different variations of low vision or blindness, right? So they were calling us like the blind band, right? And so I really hated that because it felt like pity, right? And it's funny when I tell people this, they're like, but Lachi, you're always running around saying you blind. You're saying it all the time. You're like, I'm blind, everybody, hello, and I love it. And I'm like, yes, but when I say it today, I say it from a place of pride and power. And when they were saying it, when they signed me, they were saying it from a place of like pity and woe is me. And so I'm not of the mindset of like, oh, I just want you to see me for my music. I understand why people feel that way, but that's not necessarily how I feel. I want people to see all of me, including the blindness, because I'm not ashamed of it in any way. Like, and it's for the people that come after me, right? I want people to come to me and I don't want them to say like, oh my God, you don't even look blind. Like, okay, how does a quote blind person look? Or they'll say something like, oh my God, you say you're disabled, but I don't see any disability. And I'm like, well, first and foremost, I have a disability and I'm proud of it. Right? And people in the disability community are proud and fine with using the word. I don't want to use any euphemisms like differently abled or handicapable because I'm not 4 years old. We're adults. Let's talk like adults. And number two, like when you say something like, well, you don't even look blind. It's like you're only talking about like the 0.01%, like Hollywood blind, right? What Hollywood told you blindness looks like, right? And when you say stuff like you don't even look blind, it's kind of giving me like, oh, you talk smart for a girl. And it's like, what do you mean I talk smart for a girl? I talk smart for a human. And it's not that I don't look blind, it's that I do look human. And so I am happy to wear my blindness loud and proud. And I want people to just call me blind. I want people to say I have a disability because it's their problem that they're uncomfortable with saying it.
I guess I'm sure Jay will have some questions around this as well, but Ramped was a big part of like helping people to like accept themselves and like destigmatizing disability in the music industry. So I was just wondering if you could give us like a rundown, a bit of an overview of how that came about and what you've accomplished.
Absolutely. So RAMPed, which I believe I already said stands for Recording Artists and Music Professionals with Disabilities, which is, I have to say, one of the coolest acronyms out there. We launched officially in 2022, but it started in 2021 after a panel that we did with the Grammys went viral. Just kind of discussing accessibility and disability in the music industry and the lack thereof, right? I had recently written a paper, I graduated from NYU and my master's paper was about assessing accessibility in the recording industry for blind and low vision producers and engineers. And a lot of really interesting things came out of that. And that started me having different conversations, which eventually led to this big panel with the Recording Academy and a few other folks with, different disabilities. That panel was essentially us kind of airing out our grievance to, leadership in music. And at the end of that panel, they were like, okay, well, the Grammys have heard you, and we are going to take these notes back and do something about it. And then we, on the other side of the call, were like, well, who's going to hold them accountable? We don't know what we're doing. We're just kids that make music, right? But after that panel was over, I started getting DMs and emails of people saying, we want to be a part of your movement. We want to be a part of your organization. And I remember thinking, movement, organization. But that eventually blew up into what is now Ramped. I remember one of the first things I did when I started Ramped was I set up like 50 calls with just any other music producer, music engineer, professional that I could find that had any kind of disability, right? And I asked them question like, what can we do to make the music industry more inclusive and, have more accessibility? And everybody said different things like, okay, better tech, more representation, more visibility, maybe at more accessible venues. But there was one thing that everybody said in common, and they were saying that they were isolated, right? That they felt alone, and that they felt like they were the only one. And so I was like, I just talked to 50 people that said they were the only one. So we had a big Zoom with everybody together. And that was pretty much the beginnings of Ramped. Today, Ramped works with Live Nation, Netflix, Tidal, Spotify, the Grammys, of course, to make the music industry more inclusive. We do everything from trainings and consultations. But for what I think folks in this room would find fascinating is, like I mentioned earlier, we're also a global network of music professionals and creators with disability. And that disability can include anything from neurodivergence to physical to sensory to chronic conditions to mental health conditions. As long as you are a person doing stuff in the music industry, we would love for anybody here to come apply and be a part of the fun. We have some really, really amazing artists and also professional side folks and also production side folks in our midst. And we do things like everything from songwriting retreats to mentorship programs to mixers, et cetera, et cetera. Also, sometimes we have a fund. So if an artist or an industry professional needs to travel to go to something specifically for music where they can contribute this addition of disability culture, they can apply to receive some change to get there. So we do a lot of work of what we call integrating folks with disability further into the music industry. And our goal is that folks with disability will have the ability to have financial stability and career authority without having to mask who they are. Now, they can have the option to mask if you want, but we don't want it to be required. And this is the work of destigmatizing, honestly, the world at large, using music and culture, because we feel that music is probably the quickest way to culture, the quickest way to communication, right? And so, we've seen African American use hip hop to really advance Black culture. We've seen people use country music to really evolve rural culture, or have used different global music for having us understand whether it's Asian cultures, Indian culture. It's always music that really paves the way. And so what Ramped is trying to do is pave the way of disability culture through music. And so if you, for whatever reason, are interested in joining ramped.org, please go to ramped.org and figure it out. We're going to talk to Jay. If you want to join, there's a really, really small fee, but we can definitely give like a massive discount to anyone that comes from this call here.
Amazing. That's awesome. That's awesome. So we'll speak a little bit more about Ramped in just a minute, but we had a few specific questions just about your background and your career so far, Larchie, if that's okay. So you spoke a bit there about your journey with kind of self-advocacy and communicating your own access requirements so that they were then accommodated. And I guess that has supported you to take on jobs and stuff like that. Have you got any specific examples of things that you have asked for and that have really helped? We've got a question from Sam asking basically what solutions might be appropriate for someone who hasn't really thought about self-advocacy before.
Well, one of the big things I do today, and I recognize that I'm a bit more in a different situation than I was early on, so I'll kind of go working backwards, But one of the biggest things I do today is I advocate to have a cited guide for everything I do. And generally, if I am able to have my cited guide, then I don't really have to ask for too many other things because my cited companion will take care of a bunch of things. And at first, early in my career, it was tough to convince people. But eventually, as you start to make a name for yourself, people begin to respect your writer a little bit more. But yeah, having my cited companion with me, it kind of takes a lot of things down. So that's a big one. Another one is honestly just being comfortable enough to let people know that you're blind or low vision and that you will need people to act accordingly, right? Because you're blind or low vision. So one of the things that I ask people to do is, if possible, to make sure that there's no wires, that there are clean, navigable spaces without wires so that I'm not tripping and falling. But also really being in a space where folks are understanding of the fact that I am blind and low vision and kind of what that means. Folks tend to be a lot more gracious and forgiving. They'll do things like make sure that if it's just like a glass door to the booth, that door is open. I'm not going to sit here and bang my head on the booth. I have also asked folks if we're in a dark space to like light the staircase so that I can understand where the staircase is. That has been super helpful. But I think one of the most important things that have happened to me, again, this is just an awareness discussion, is when I'm working, if I'm being the vocalist or perhaps a writer, right? And I'm working with a producer and generally a producer will have their screen up in front so everybody can see. And they'll say, hey, do I need to cut here? Do I need to cut here? Oh, let me slide this to the left. Obviously, I don't know what's going on, right? So as an awareness measure, I ask people if they can really kind of describe more or utilize the description of what they're doing through the music. Okay, play it for me so that I can hear what it sounds like this, instead of you just moving things around. It really just allowed me to have the confidence to speak more and to speak up better.
Amazing. I think all of those things you've described in isolation, they're quite small tweaks, really. Mm-hmm. And it does just come from the confidence and I guess the experience of maybe coming up against barriers the first time you tried to do something to then say, oh, next time, this is actually what I need to make it better.
And I also want to throw in a few other things too, like having folks come downstairs to come bring you up, right? Or assigning someone to come bring you upstairs. Or if it's the first time in your studio, doing a walkthrough. So I tour all the time. So part of my writer is we have to do a stage walk around so that I understand exactly how large the stage is. And we have to go find exactly where the restroom is, et cetera, et cetera. So I know my way to the restroom on my own. And then two other things that I often do is we do a thing called a access check-in. So anyone who's working on my project, I want you to tell me your name, what you do, and maybe even a brief self-description just so that my brain can kind of align who you are to your voice, which always really, really has helped. And I've heard that when I do this, like let's say, for instance, I do this with a production crew and I say, everybody kind of go in a circle, say your name, like what you do, and just a very, very brief self-description because ain't nobody got time for 45 minutes of what you're wearing. And they do that and they say that like it actually helps them. It helps them feel more comfortable with the rest of their team. So that's another thing that I asked for as well. But again, I ask that nowadays. That wasn't something I asked when I was younger, but it's more of like a requirement of LACHI today.
And are they kind of standard things that you have on your rider? Do you have like an access rider?
I do have an access rider, and in my access rider, I talk about what I as LACHI needs, but then I also include what I would like. I don't enforce these, but I include what I would like for them to consider in order to make my show more accessible for my audiences.
That's super interesting. So we've got one question here about networking. Obviously, the music industry is very reliant on networking and building up your professional network. Mm-hmm. How do you typically approach those kinds of spaces where it might be like a gala, like you were saying? Mm-hmm. How do you kind of meet who you want to meet in those spaces?
One of the biggest things and I said this earlier in my little story, but one of the biggest things that helped me with networking was, well, two of the biggest things were my pearly white teeth. So I'm always smiling. And my cane. my Canedy cane. So these glam canes are like gold. This one I think literally is gold, but they are gold. So I'll give you a really, really great example. Um, I have a friend. Should I say her name? Some of you might know her. I have a friend. Her name is Precious Perez, and she is a very talented singer. She's a songwriter, and I started wanting to bring her to some really cool places. But for me, I'm like a social butterfly. So I'll like bring you to a place and then I'm just going to go social butterfly and I'll be like, shoot, I forgot that you're still there. So she's also very bubbly, but people weren't like approaching her, right? Because she's total, right? And so it's very difficult for her to approach other people. So people weren't approaching her and it's like, oh, these are such great rooms. And so sometimes I'll go back and like walk her to introduce her to people. But then again, I am like really bad at that. So fast forward, I give her a couple of glam canes. Okay. She's got like a pink one. I think she's got like a silver one or whatever. And now we're going to these parties and then people are coming to her. And it starts with like, oh, wow, I love your outfit and that cane. Okay, girl, like, what's up? And then she's like, oh, well, hey, my name is Precious. I'm a singer-songwriter. What do you do? So now she can start the networking and the cane is like an attractive beam because the cane says a few things. It says, I am good. I'm approachable. I'm fun. I have flair. Come on over. Come speak to me. It's a conversation starter and it drops a lot of those kind of barriers of fear of like that folks have to say hello to like a blind person. And then we've getting, men have them too. Guys have them. They're walking around with their suits and like a dark black glam cane. They've said it's worked. So that's number one. Number two, I am very jocular. When I was young and I was afraid of, and I was shy, I had all these jokes and all these stories and all these quips in my head and I never shared them. And then finally I ripped this mask off and now all I do is talk, tell jokes, have a good time, smile. And, one of the things that I am not is angry about having a disability or ashamed. So I think that comes off of my being. And so people are like, oh, I can talk to her because I'm not going to get yelled at, right? I'm not going to feel like a bad person or anything like that. And then I think lastly is that I'm very anti, sort of the medical model, charity model type of vibe. I'm all about the culture. Right. And so, and I know, I don't know how much you folks know, but obviously the medical model says that, we look at blindness through a medical lens and the cure is the hero. So it's all about cure. I need a cure. I'm going to just sit here in my room until there's a cure. So that's just definitely not me. I'm too busy. And then the charity model is looking at blindness or disability as pity, right? Objects of pity. And that the hero is the do-gooder. And so it's like, oh, give to charity so that this blind person can have something to eat. And you're a good person for doing that. Meanwhile, the blind person is stripped of dignity. So the model of which I love to live my life is the social model, which says that if society is more inclusive and accessible, then everybody wins and everybody's the hero together. So the cure isn't the hero. The do-gooder isn't the hero. You and me together are the hero because we're making the world more accessible. And I navigate through life that way. And I talk a lot about that in my book. So Jay's going to get to my book, right, Jay? Wink.
We are going to get to it.
But really to answer your question, I think a lot of it is a mindset. People are drawn to positivity. People are drawn to visionary. People are drawn to authenticity. And that really comes when you drop the mask and allow yourself to drop the internalized ableism.
Absolutely. I think the cane example is a really good one as well, because it doesn't take much activity. It takes a bit of confidence on your side, a bit of a leap of faith. But actually, in using a cane, it passes some of that potential awkwardness onto the other people, if you know what I mean. It's then, passes on the responsibility to other people to make that first connection if you don't know exactly who's in front of you all the time. So we had another specific question about management. So I think you're one of the few blind musicians that I know that have representation, that have a team around you. So this person was keen to know, at what point did you kind of get that representation? Were you already a fairly established artist? How did that kind of come about?
I mean, today I have a pretty robust team that, everything from a business manager to someone who does my social media to someone who's helping us put our tours together to et cetera, et cetera. When I started, remember earlier I said that as soon as I got out of school, I got a job and then I just got signed to a major label. So at the end of the day, that helps. And it's so funny too, because the way we got signed is I had a blind guitarist and he and I went down to South by Southwest and we played some songs in South by Southwest. We didn't actually have a real gig. We just played at some hole in the wall in Texas, and a label rep just saw us and said, I love what you're doing. Here's my card. And us both being blind, we didn't know what to do with the card. We're like, what does it say? Does it? But, so being signed super early does help. But what I will say though is there's a misconception that it's like, oh, if only I had a manager, if only I had an agent, then I can start getting all these gigs and all the money will start pouring in. What you don't realize is that they actually are looking at you the same way. They're looking at you as the cash cow. They're like, I want to sign an artist that will pay my bills. So if you're not making, let's say, I don't know what the average rent is in the UK, right? So let's just say it's 2,000, what do you guys say, quid? 2,000 quid, right? Let's say it's 2,000 quid a month, right? They're looking at you. This is 12 months. That's 24,000, right? So they're looking at you to be able to provide them with 24,000 a year at least before they sign you so that you can be paying their rent. So that's why it's kind of like you have to look at it the other way. You have to build yourself up to a point where you're actually making enough money that you don't actually need a manager, that they actually start coming to you.
Yes.
And I know
it's a real chicken and egg situation. And it is a conundrum, really, isn't it?
It's quite the catch-22. However, this is kind of what Ramped is trying to solve. Like a really great example is, again, Precious Perez is a great example. She didn't have a manager. And I remember she was telling me every once in a while, she'd be like, gosh, I tried to send my EPK to this person and I just keep getting no. And I was like, okay, well, why don't we look within the Ramped network? Let's see, put some feelers out. And of course, somebody from the Ramped network who's a manager, because Ramped is not just artists and, musicians. It's also the industry side. Someone said, okay, I'll give it a shot. And now she has a manager. I think they did like a trial first. And now she has a manager. So one of the ways I built my team was 100% through network. At no point have I ever sent like a cold EPK or a cold email to folks. I mean, at least not in any time recent. So all of the managers I've had have been a friend of a friend, a recommendation through my network. The woman who does my social media, she had previously done my mentor's social media and I kind of stole her away. The person who is currently doing our tour is part of the team who knew someone else. And so when you start to really build a good network, if you have a really strong network, you can just pull straight from there, or at the very least get recommendations. Now, the last thing I'm going to say to answer your question, though, I don't think this is going to be a problem in this room, but I think it's to also be sure to have your craft honed. Just be really, really good. Have your production quality sound ready to go. Have your EPK ready to go. If somebody Googles you, make sure something comes up and it's polished and ready to go. You don't have to have 75 million followers, but you should have a pristine, nice something out there so that when people Google you, they see it. You have to be great at your actual craft, which is your skill, whether you're a producer, whether you're an engineer, whether you're a producer songwriter, that you're actually really, really great at your craft. Because if you at any point, because here's the kicker. People love working with myself and a bunch of the folks that are at Ramped because it's like, this person is good and they have a disability. That's freaking amazing, right? As opposed to, I have a disability. Why won't you sign me? How dare you? And then all of a sudden, it's like, well, you're not even that good. That's why we're not signing you. Right? It's like, I'm not going to sign you because you have a disability.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. I'm not going to sign you just because you have a disability. You have to be good. And so I always tell folks, be really, really good at your craft, be undeniably good at your craft, have a great presence, and be competitive. Because then at that point, the fact that you have a disability is actually a unique selling point.
Absolutely. So you mentioned there an EPK, electronic press kit, I believe is the acronym. Does your team around you support you with your kind of visual assets and your styling and stuff like that? I guess that could be a common barrier for a blind musician is getting that kind of visual side down, because it is an important part of the music industry. Can you share a
Yes.
little about that?
Well, I will say it's an important part for everyone in the music industry. I mean, it's not simply, I mean, of course, it's going to be more difficult for blind folks, but it is difficult for everyone. This ability to figure out how to brand yourself, and how to get visuals to match, how to get, maybe how to keep up with an Instagram or some of these platforms that are very visual based and make sure that it looks nice and cohesive and it's consistent, right? And that's on top of, doing your music and putting your heart on your sleeve as a producer or whatever, or spending your time trying to get clients and gigs, right? So it's just so much stuff. I have someone that helps me with my graphics and that helps me with my social media. I didn't always have that. I would do my own social media and it would take me hours. It was very, very time consuming to do my own social media, but I did things that were clever ways to get around the fact that I couldn't see very well. So for instance, no matter what, your visual brand is going to cost you a little bit of money. So one of the things that I did was use Fiverr. Fiverr, I don't know, do you guys have Fiverr in the UK?
Yeah, I think it's global.
Yeah, right. So I would use Fiverr to make my logo, and I may or may not pass it to a friend and say, hey, does this look good? Right. And then when putting up anything, I just have my logo everywhere. And it's just one picture, but at least I have a cohesive brand and it's everywhere. And people are like, okay, I understand what this person is, right? And then maybe I have the logo in black and in red and in blue, but I have my logo everywhere. And so that's the beginnings of a brand. And, it only cost me a $5. And then I would go to social media and I would post my logo with my music playing under it. Especially if you guys are producers or engineers, you can just post your logo and have your music going under it and then just have a caption going like, sick new beat, tell me what you think in the comments. And you didn't do anything with having to figure out, is my camera nice or whatever, because all you did was just post up that logo. So that's just going to be my little hack for you folks. Go to Fiverr or somewhere and just get a logo done and then just get maybe several versions of that logo done and put it everywhere to create a cohesive brand.
So just for anyone that hasn't used it, so Fiverr with 2 R's on the end, it's a global network of freelancers offering services. I imagine they've probably got kind of an AI component now as well, but it's a low cost way. A lot of kind of up and coming artists, graphic designers, copywriters advertise their services on there. So it can be a way to get some great assets. So one final question, and I promise we'll move on to the book very shortly. So you do a ton of stuff. We've heard that. How do you balance the kind of creativity, the advocacy, and the business leadership stuff? Because there's quite different skill sets there.
Sure.
Can you share any insight into that?
Coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, you know what? Honestly, if I'm going to be honest with you, Jay, I feel that I only do one thing. What I really do is I entertain people into giving a crap about disability and accessibility. And whether that entertainment is speaking engagements, whether it is my leadership, whether it is my comedy. So when we tour, we do a comedic 10 minutes before we do the music. And so we like to keep it very funny, whether it is through fashion, whether it is through my book, which Jay's going to talk about, whether, and whether it's through my music, we're doing the same one thing. And it is entertaining people, because I feel that the ultimate problem is this fear of being pathologized, this inability for us to talk about it in a way that is fun, joyful, soulful, and, gets people to connect, right? I feel like everybody has some form of disability or neurodivergence or some condition. Not that they're going to get it in the future, that they got something now, but no one wants to talk about anything because they're so afraid to talk about it. Meanwhile, then we have the activists, right? And I heavily respect my activists and all the activism, but sometimes it's just too much for a lot of people to be able to handle, all the signs and all the like, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. And so then they just avoid even dealing with it at all because they feel that they're either going to end up walking away feeling sad or feeling bad or feeling mad. And I want them to feel glad and rad. So I feel that if we want to change the system, right? Because it's the system that's the problem. The system, the whole big system is the problem.
Yeah, yeah.
What I work to do is to get the people benefiting from the system excited to change it with me. And as long as I'm doing that, I'm not doing too much. So that's how I'm able to juggle it, because it's all just one thing.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I think let's talk about the book for a little bit and we'll come back. We've got some specific questions about Ramped, which we'll come back to. But Tilly, you were going to ask a little bit about the book.
Yeah, so we got to have a look at the book before this meetup. And while not giving anything away, I think what it does really well is it presents very heavy topics in a funny and light way that's quite approachable for a lot of people. I was just wondering if you could tell us a bit about why you decided to write a book in particular and what you've aimed to do with it.
Yes. So the book is called I Identify as Blind. And, like I've said several times throughout this call, is that the biggest problem I think folks are having is masking, right? The inability to talk about it, the inability to have fun and, really walk away not feeling bad after speaking on disability or accessibility. And that's really why I wrote this book, because I felt that way. It's why I masked. It's why I threw away my own cane, because I didn't know how to talk about it. So this book, which is I Identify as Blind, is me proudly standing in front of my blindness and saying, I don't just happen to be blind. It's not blind in the background. It is part of my identity, front and center. I also celebrate my neurodivergence, which is, my ADHD, my OCD, my general anxiety, very proudly and openly, without having anyone feel bad. So what this book does, it's a very sort of humorous book of essays that go through, like Tilly said, really hard and maybe hard to talk about topics, with dad jokes, right? I sprinkle in some rap bars here and there. I use some of my own stories to make some points, but I talk with probably almost over 40 to 45 different thought leaders, public figures, celebrities, comedians, artists, so that I could use their stories. And I have some of their interviews in the book as well. So some good examples is we spoke to Team Coldplay. We spoke to RJ Mitte of Breaking Bad. We spoke to Ali Stroker, who is a Tony-winning singer as well. And we really just get into how, the badassery, the disability pride, the disability culture. And why did I write this book? Well, I wrote this book, like I said, because it was really time. Like I'm just over it. I'm over everybody being so sad about disability. It's not that serious. I'm a track runner. Okay. And I'm not like long distance. So I can do sprints, I can do 500s, I can do 1Ks, 5Ks. I really can't do like the 26 miles or whatever. I know you guys do kilometers. So, but when I run those, I run so fast, right? And then I just poop out. But I run so fast in those shorter runs to the point where I had been known to, when they say go, the other runners run. I'm just like, yeah, go for it. I'm just going to sit here. What time is it? Then I will start running. I will give them like 3 seconds, 5 seconds, and then I'll run and I'll beat them. That's the kind of pride I'm talking about. It's me winning a boxing match with one arm behind my back, right? That's how I see my disability. And so I see it with so much pride I've had to overcompensate because of this, which has made me gain so many skills navigating the world differently that folks that don't have my disability don't have. And so I wanted to showcase that through my stories and the stories of other badasses with humor, honesty, and heart. And so that is what this book is. I'd love for you to go pick it up and get it. It's called I Identify as Blind.
Why did you use the word identify in the title? I think it's quite interesting because a lot of people in influence, they say, I am blind or I happen to be blind. What does the word identify mean to you?
Ugh. And you know what? And I'm so tired of that. It makes me want to throw up. But so actually, the reason I titled this book this. So when I think it was 20, I don't know what the years were, but when I first kind of came into trying to find out more blind folks and stuff like that, I Googled it. And the first person that came up was a blind influencer. And she said, I am a this, I am a that, and I happen to be blind, right? And that didn't sit well with me for some reason, because I was already in my journey. And so while I was touring and I was doing my comedic open, I was saying like, my name is Lachi and I am a proud, disabled woman and it's all part of my identity. I am Black and it's part of my identity. And I'm a musician and I'm an Aries and it's part of my identity. And all of these parts of my identity make me who I am. And my manager was like, yeah, you're taking way too long. So make it shorter. So I said, okay, my name is Lachi. I'm a Black woman with cornrows and I identify as blind. So I started saying that just on my shows because I wanted it to be about identity and not just happen to be. Oh, I would say I don't just happen to be blind. Blindness is part of my identity. But I took all that out and I just said, my name is Lachi. I'm a Black woman with cornrows and I identify as blind. Okay, so that's step one. Part two, PBS called me. Like PBS, it was like one of their online specials. They called and they said, Lachi, we would like for you to be on our special. And I was like, oh my God, PBS wants to talk to me? That's our national broadcast station, which I think Trump is canceling, but that's another discussion. That's our national broadcasting system. So I had thought that I had made it out in the world. So I was very excited. And they said, we'd like to talk to you about Ray Charles. And I was like, oh, okay. Fine, whatever. So I get on there and I did all my research. And so the lady asks me, she goes, all right, so tell us who you are. I say, my name is Lachi. I'm a Black woman with cornrows and I identify as blind. And she says, okay, so let's talk about Ray Charles. And we talk about Ray Charles and we have a fascinating conversation about, the trope of the Black blind musician, all of that, right? So then it's over and they put it up on their YouTube and I leave and whatever. I come back and in the comments are all these people. And you would think we had this great conversation about Ray Charles. Nobody said a thing about Ray Charles. Maybe like 3 comments were about Ray Charles. And there were tons and tons of comments of like, what the hell does she mean by identify as blind? You're either blind or you're not. Or, ma'am, do you read Braille or not? Or blindness is not an identity. It's a medical condition. Or I don't want people to start thinking trans blindness is a thing. So I was like, why is everybody so mad? Everybody was so angry. And I was like the little dumb girl. I went in and I started trying to reply to the comments. That was like the wrong thing to do because it just got everybody more upset. So then I got asked by Google to do one of their Super Bowl ads. It was an ad that they would put on TikTok and Instagram and all these things. So I was like, okay. So as part of the ad, they did the same thing. They asked me who I was. And I said, my name is Lachi. I'm a Black woman with cornrows. And then I talked about music and all that other, great stuff. And then this campaign had over 10 million hits. And all everybody was talking about was, what does identify mean? They wouldn't even talk about the Google product. Sorry, Google. And they're like, what does she mean by identify? That doesn't make any sense. Everybody was so angry that I said, I have the title for my book. And I stand on it because it's part of my identity. I'm not ashamed. I don't just happen to be a woman. I'm a proud woman. I don't just happen to be Black. My parents are Nigerian. I don't just happen to be Nigerian. The house my parents live in Nigeria, they live in a mansion. They're both chiefs. Yes, humble brag. And the house that they built, the mansion that they built, is on the soil of over hundreds of generations of our property that we own there. So our house is on the bones of our actual ancestors. So I don't just happen to be Nigerian, right? And so I don't happen to be any part of me. I am all of those things. They are part of my identity, and I am not afraid to put it forward. Anybody who says, oh, I just happen to be, or is downplaying it, I get it. You're on your own journeys. But at the end of the day, it is internalized ableism. And all I want for you is liberation. All I want for you is freedom because it feels so good outside.
It is funny how people get mad over very specific things. And it's interesting because people should be allowed to identify as like what or say
whatever they want.
But it's interesting because I think especially with disability, there are a lot of things that people like, oh, you mustn't be blind if you can't read Braille, but that's not necessarily true. I think there is a big thing about blindness comes in all different ways, but that's not necessarily portrayed in the media.
No, it definitely isn't. I call it Hollywood blind. Hollywood blind is like your typical black glasses, has a dog, maybe is playing the piano. um, that's what I call Hollywood blind. And it turns out that most blind people are actually not what someone would perceive as blind. Blindness is a spectrum. Less than 10% of blind folks are total. And I believe also less than 10% of blind people read Braille. Only 2% use a dog, less than 8% use a cane. So really, most blind people are just out here freeballing it, just going like, okay. And it's all because they want to avoid stigma. So many people that need to use a cane don't, or so many people that need to use certain things don't do it because of the stigma attached. And so, we would be far better able to advocate for ourselves and accommodate ourselves, even without advocating, if the stigma was dropped.
I think going back to the book, because I think you talk about a lot of this in there, especially like throughout your own life experiences, you write like those mini essays and things. What was your favorite one to write? And like, how did you find the writing process as a whole?
My favorite story to write was talking about, so I've always been low vision, but in 2016, I woke up pretty much total, not fully total, but I just woke up one day and it was just gone. Boop, right? And the story that I tell is that I wake up, I'm totally blind. I'm in Harlem. So it's on 99th Street. And I want to get to the clinic on 14th Street so that they can check out my eyes. But I wake up, I'm blind. I call my partner and I say, hey, I just woke up totally blind, like blind. What do I do? And he's like, sit there, don't move. I'm going to come save you. And I was like, oh, that's not going to happen. Oof, you used the wrong words, baby. So I hang up and I put my clothes on. I brush my teeth. So obviously I can do anything. Like I figured out how to brush my freaking teeth. You know how hard it is to get, when there's no toothpaste left and you got to try to squeeze it out? I was able to figure out how to get toothpaste out of that very empty toothpaste bottle. So I figured I could do anything. And so I go outside. I walk down the street. I got the banister on one side. I have like the screaming kids on the other. So I know the park is over there. So I know that I'm on the right sidewalk. I get to the end of the sidewalk. And then this guy who would always say, hey girl, you look so good. What you gonna do? I was always ignoring him because I was like, okay, you know what? Can you walk me to the metro? You get a date today. And that story, I talk about all of the different like people that I meet along the way that help me get to the clinic from one step to getting into the metro to the person who helped me do this and the person who helped me do that. And all of the like crazy antics that finally get me to that clinic was probably my favorite story. Because at the end of the day, the big takeaway is the fact that if somebody woke up blind, like somebody who doesn't have the experience of blindness, if they woke up blind, they'd probably just, a lot of folks tell me, I can't assume, but a lot of folks tell me that they would just give up or they would want to die or they would want to whatever. But not only did I want to just go to the clinic, it was also not really a big deal. Like I didn't see it as like some superhero thing. I just saw it as a bunch of New Yorkers being there for each other. Honestly. And lastly, me going blind, when I got to the clinic, the doctor kind of gave me some eye drops and was like, okay, this is going to clear up your vision a little bit, but it's going to keep happening and your vision is going to get worse and worse and worse until you're eventually totally blind. And you know what? I didn't walk away thinking like, oh my God, grievance, I'm going to lose my vision. My first thought was, how do I turn this into a business proposition? Like, how do I turn this into cash, right? I'm Nigerian, so that's how we think. And I was just like, how do I make this work for me? I want to start jumping out of airplanes. I want to ride a hot air balloon. I want to go horseback riding. I want to go camel riding. And I started doing all of those things. And this right now, today, me here is me just still doing all of those things that I said I wanted to do since 2016.
It's really cool. And I guess because you recorded your own audiobook as well, didn't you?
Oh yeah. Oh God, that
And
was the
like,
worst.
did you have fun telling that story in the audiobook though? Because you could express how you were feeling at the time through your voice.
I did have fun telling the stories. And also the audiobook is sprinkled with a lot of music as well, a lot of my music. Cornrows Reimagined, which Jay played in the beginning, is one of the songs that we sprinkle throughout the audiobook. So it was really fun creating the audiobook, but I have to say it was very grueling because it was many, 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 many hours of being in the studio and reading and rereading things. But the audiobook is very, very fun because I am just telling the story. And one of the things that we're really proud and excited about is that we will be releasing the audiobook at the same time as the book on January 27th so that, blind folks can have access to the story right at the same time.
When I used to get Braille books or even audiobooks, there used to be like a 3-month wait. And by that time, everyone had read the book.
Yes,
So I think it's really cool that you're doing it at the same time so everyone can have that experience together.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I think we better do some quick fire questions about Ramped, if that's okay. We've
Sure.
got a few that I think are really great questions, actually. So we've got one from Yvette who asks, what barriers do you think there still are to educating sighted people in the professional music industry about sight loss? And I guess Ramp's other objectives as well. What is it that people just don't get that could be kind of an easy win kind of thing?
I think what it is there needs to be two things. One, more leadership. Right? A lot of people think about, oh, if we could just get a blind person on stage or, let's get visibility and representation. Honestly, we need the representation in the background. We need more folks in the boardrooms of these music labels. We need more folks working at the desk at some of these music places so that the decision makers can see that blind folks or folks with disabilities are not just here to be props, right? We're actually here to work and have, make decisions and change things. And this is one of the big things that Ramped is working on. We have a leadership pipeline. We started with getting folks into the Recording Academy leadership, and then we're moving into the Folk Alliance leadership, which is international. We're moving into Songwriters of North America, and hopefully we can start moving into more other international situations. The second one is, but that we do need more visibility and conversations at the places where they are having them, right? One of the things that Ramped really likes to say that we do is, let's say, for instance, Sony Music is having a party inside the Sony Music building, right? But the building doesn't have a ramp, right, to get into the building. Well, Ramped is not here to advocate for a ramp, but Ramped is here to get disabled people a ticket to that Sony party. So we want to make sure that you're in the rooms they are in. Although we don't have the capacity, there are going to be other organizations that maybe work to do infrastructural change. But what we want to do is we want to get you at the table where the other decision makers are so that we can start having these conversations. The last thing I'll say to that, Jay, is that for so long in the music industry or any industry, it's always been advocates, right? That have been telling people, or activists that have been telling people, you need to do this, you need to do that. What Ramped does is we are music professionals. So we're actually talking eye to eye using their language and using our language. Our language is their language because we're music professionals and they're music professionals. So we're not slapping them on the wrist. We're having like an eye to eye conversation and it helps them listen so much more. So there's still a lot more ways to go, but we're finding out how the best ways we can do that in a way where folks will listen.
So we spoke a little bit there about representation within the industry, having those role models. It's quite easy, I think, for that kind of tokenism to creep in. I can certainly think of examples where disabled musicians have been kind of tokenized within the music industry. What advice would you give musicians to avoid that in their own careers?
Be good. Be really, really good. Because the reason people are tokenized is because someone has to find a reason to be entertained, right? And so if you're not giving them talent, then you're giving them inspiration porn, I guess. So if you're really, really good, then it's like, oh crap. So you want to just be really, really good. That gets you out of that sort of, tokenism. And then kind of, you're now just competitive. Mm-hmm. And that's the simplest truth.
Cool. Yeah, I think that is totally true as well, because you're there for your skill.
Mhm.
A question from Melody. So Melody is asking, obviously Ramped is kind of pan disability.
Mm.
I guess there's the challenge of advocating for such a broad community and, often conflicting access requirements and stuff like that. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, Ramped doesn't specifically advocate for accessibility. So again, what we do is we do culture and inclusion. So we're here to get you a ticket to the Sony party. We're not necessarily here to help build the ramp to get you inside it, though there are other organizations that do that. So this is why we're able to really say, hey, disability is a holistic conversation. Because if we sit there and only have a bunch of wheelchair users coming in, then the industry thinks disability is only wheelchair users, right?
Mhm.
And so we want to keep it very pan disability. And the way we do that, again, is by we at Ramped, our big thing, right? We're a peer vetted network. So to join Ramped, we check to make sure that you're actually doing something in the music industry, or whether it's the audio industry or the sound industry. And let me give you a good example. What's a big thing that you guys do in the UK? I don't know. Let's say somebody got to go to the Brit Awards, right? And we were able to get it so that we worked with the Brit Awards, and then the Brit Awards says that we want to have disabled representation at our show. So we want a couple of people there. That would be something that Ramped works to do, right? So we get you there, we get you inside, we maybe even get you like the ability to be a part of the committee that works in accessibility with the Brit Awards. What we don't do is work to try to get like a ramp for you to get into the Brit Awards. And because we say we work only with professionals, our big caveat is we say you do have to work on your own accommodations. So while we are here to help and support you with your accommodations, we're not responsible for your accommodations. The only reason we have to say that is because then we will just turn into an accessibility organization, and we won't have the bandwidth to be getting you the tickets to the Brit Awards, et cetera, et cetera. So it allows us that space to be able to very honed focus on getting you into leadership, getting you into access, getting you onto the stage. And so we ask for folks to generally accommodate themselves. However, when we do internal programs at Ramped, we do our best to make sure that we have a sign language interpreter. We generally have anyone who's presenting, they'll do like a self-description. We have captions turned on if it's a Zoom situation. So we do our best for our Ramped events to be extraordinarily accommodating as we can. So those are the ways that we work there.
Awesome. Super interesting. And that semi leads on to my next question, which is the last one about Ramped, actually. It was about the process of setting it up, and you alluded to this slightly earlier, but just to pry a little more. I guess for someone that wants to take the leap of faith and set up a project or an organization, were there any kind of key moments where you realized Ramped would be kind of viable and sustainable long term? How did you make the jump from it being an idea to a fully fledged organization?
So just a week ago, Ramp turned 4. So Ramped is now 4 years old. Yay. And I don't know. I have to tell you that, or like I said, in the beginning days, it was just a bunch of Zoom meetings where a bunch of freedom fighters were getting together going, what are we doing? We want to make the music industry more accessible. So, and we were just really pumped and very exciting. And we were having these weekly Zooms. While we were having those weekly Zooms, this is in 2021, while we were having those weekly Zooms, other organizations like the National Venue Association or the National Women of Music Association, they were like, what's going on in there? What are they doing? They were like really excited about the momentum because we were leaking it in socials and stuff like that. And everybody kind of wanted to work with us. And so we just were really grassroots, if I'm going to be honest with you. We were very grassroots, and our first partner was the Recording Academy, was the Grammys. And the Grammys came in and they said, we want you to like consult on our 2022 Grammys. Mm-hmm. What happened with that, because remember, we're just a bunch of people, right? And I was leading, I'm leading the charge, but we are still an amorphous group of folks.
I mean, and what a first partner to have to allow you to put structure around it, though.
So what happened was, the Grammys asked if we could consult, and we said yes. and we consulted them on the Grammys. That got us into the New York Times. That got us into Billboard. That got us into Forbes. That got us all these articles. And then what happened was, because all these articles came out, people started asking us for more partnerships. People started coming in for more memberships, and we started getting paychecks. I didn't even have a bank account for Ramped. So I'm just sitting here like juggling all this. Where do I put it? I was putting it in on, so Ramped really just came together very grassroots, and partners came and started saying what they wanted and what they wanted to see. And so we began the infrastructure came as a response from demand. And so we started saying, okay, well, we can offer consultations. We can offer, and as the members came in, the members started saying what they wanted to see. So the members of the global network, so the member side versus the industry side, right? So the members started coming in and saying, well, we would love to see a song camp. We would love to have mentorship. And so we were really responding to what everybody wanted. And then the trouble became, oh my God, we're doing everything everyone wants. Let's hone this down so that we have certain things that we want to offer. And so we're really proud of the several things that we now offer. The several programs that we offer are very, very keenly, specific to what our members want. And then the trainings and the consultations we offer are specific to what the industry wants. So I will not say that we had a typical sort of entrepreneurial growth situation. It was very specific to what we had. And then today, I think one of our biggest things that we're happy about is that major label executives and let's say folks that work at big brand folks and et cetera, label owners, they are coming to Ramped and saying, I want to join not as a partner, but as a member. Because I have neurodivergence. And so to be able to see this from the top, because, it's tough up there. You want to be competitive. So to see that Ramped is having such an impact that leaders are coming in and disclosing because of our work. I think that's one of our biggest things that I personally am proud of.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That was a question that I slipped in just because I see some parallels between what we're attempting to do at Sound Without Sight and what you guys have done at Ramped. Obviously, you're a few more rungs up the ladder than we are. We're still very grassroots, but no, thank you very much for sharing. That really,
absolutely.
Really so we've got just a couple of questions about your role as a producer and your creative process there. So we've had a couple of people ask about how you produce. Is there any particular hardware or software that you use? Is it more of a collaborative approach where you're directing compositions and stuff like that? What does production mean to you?
I'm a producer in several different ways. So I'm a vocal producer. So generally when I vocal produce, I may or may not be behind the knobs. Sometimes I'm just brought into session and I'm sort of working with the artist and the producer to vocal produce and talk about what the harmony should be, et cetera, get the best performance out of the artist and get the best vocal production out of the producer. Other times I'm a songwriter producer. So just yesterday I was in like a very, very fun songwriting session. It was a K-pop session. And I'm a songwriter producer. Generally when I'm a songwriter producer, I'm at the knobs. But I'm also songwriting with the songwriter and maybe the artist or just a couple of songwriters. And then I'm really a facilitator. I'm not really vocal producing as much. I see myself as a facilitator of like trying to keep the songwriters happy, keep the session flowing. And then thirdly, and this is the least of my producing, is being a track producer, right? And I am not a mastering engineer, and my mixing is rough mixing. Right. It's mixing to give to a mix engineer. I have done some final mixes and I got to tell you, like, I would tell you to pay someone else to mix for. But as a track producer, I use my go-to DAW is Pro Tools. I use other DAWs as well. I mean, they all generally very basically have the same setup, but Pro Tools is just such a standard and I've just been using it all. I'm a huge heavy on shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts girl. And also there are really great. I mean, a lot of you in here know Pro Tools, so you can make a shortcut for pretty much everything. They're good with the keyboard shortcuts they already have, but you can create your own shortcuts if you want to have zero to do with the screen, right?
Yeah. And you mentioned being behind the knobs just now. Are you generally using like a hardware controller with Pro Tools, or any speech, or how do you access Pro Tools?
When I say behind the knobs, I'm just kind of being a little facetious.
Yeah.
I use my Focusrite, obviously, just for, preamping and this and that. And that has a few mixed dials, but it's very simplistic. And
Mhm.
then what is this? What is this? What is this? Oh, my MPK Mini. All right.
Oh yeah, nice.
I'm talking to NI right now so that I can really like hone into their complete. Because right now I do not use voiceover to do any of the things I do. I use 100% the keys and my very limited vision to kind of navigate around. But I mean, it's so second nature to do like first level edits, right? Everything from stop, start to like shifting and, mute and this and that. Everything that's a single layer command I can do without looking up, right? And actually, in my paper that I did with NYU, one of the conclusions I had come to is that folks who use keyboard shortcuts, so blind folks, are actually faster at single layer commands than sighted folks.
Yeah,
And
I
then
totally
obviously,
believe that.
yeah. So actually, if you gave, one of the things that came out of the paper is that it takes a blind person much longer to complete if you gave a sighted person and a blind person the same exact project to complete, it would take the sighted person much quicker to complete it. However, if you gave a blind person and a sighted person the same tasks that only had single layer commands, and everything you did was a series of single layer commands, that the blind person would actually go faster than the sighted person. And so my conclusion would be like, well, let's make multi-layer commands accessible to keyboard shortcut only as well. If there's a way for us to figure out how to make like very complex layered commands, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing, I use a lot of my own text to speech and speech to text. Another thing I do is when I'm in songwriting session, I set up a Google Drive where all the songwriters will write in my doc. And so at that point, I can use either VoiceOver or Zoom because it's my doc that we're using. So now it's accessible to me. And so these are just the little hacks that I use to be able to make sure. Oh, and then the other thing about Pro Tools, which any Pro Tool user knows this 100%, is the sort of presetting everything you need to preset. So I have anytime I'm going to have a vocal, I have my vocal track with all of the kind of standard plugins for an amazing female vocal performance, an amazing male vocal performance, an amazing guitar performance, an amazing bass performance, an amazing cello performance, et cetera, et cetera. Generally single instrument performances. I also have, delay setups that I have created myself. I have tons and tons of preset track layouts so that, a person coming into my studio is not waiting for me to spend 45 minutes trying to put together a great vocal track for them. And I just have a great preset vocal track. And so these have been just like really great shortcuts that I've been able to use.
Yeah, using those track presets saves so much time. And just an artist comes in, you're just good to go straight away. It's a great look. So we had a specific question from Pascalis. This might be for you directly, or it might be any artist you're aware of through Ramped. Have you got any experience using haptic feedback and music technology equipment? So I guess we've seen that in a performance setting with the sub packs for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. What about music production? Any examples of haptics being used there?
I have not actually myself. I do know that MIDI and another organization were working on, it's like a controller where you can, I don't know exactly what it is, but you would know more about it, Jay. But I haven't actually had too much experience with haptic feedback in the sense of music production, if I'm going to be honest. The only real example of haptic feedback that I have had is, like you mentioned, Subpack. Coldplay had invited us to one of their concerts, which was really cool. And yes, another humble brag. I went to a Coldplay concert. They gave us the sub packs, and we got to use them, and they were actually pretty fun, but it was a lot. Like I didn't need it. So
Sure.
but I'm actually very curious to see where the technology goes for haptic feedback.
Yeah, I mean, it's my personal opinion, but I think that there's a lot of potential there.
Hmm.
I think for blind folks, especially, there's such a tendency for software developers to want to translate everything that's visual into audio. But actually, everyone has a mobile phone that can pump out great haptic signals. I'm sure there's ways that, and this is what the MIDI Association are looking at, or one of their products is,
Hmm.
yeah, how can you use MIDI to transmit those signals from a DAW to an app on your phone that you can assign to different patterns and stuff to signify different things within your production setting
Sure.
session. So yeah, there's definitely room for more research in that area. And Pascalis, hello.
Hello. Nice to be here. So nice conversation, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you for the feedback. Yeah, I'm actually exploring whether haptic feedback could be integrated into devices. Me personally, I'm using some loopers. I'm a sighted person, and I was trying to explore whether devices that I'm able to use for performing music could be assessed in a way, such a way for people who can see what they actually pressing. So I'm just exploring these scenarios.
Yeah, no, I get it. No, I think that's really great. And I'm also super curious to see where all of this goes. I know that one of the things that I've been having trouble conquering is, and Jay, you're going to say, really, you're doing another thing. I want to do, I've been trying to get into sort of DJing. I do actually have a couple of blind DJ friends, but I could see haptics doing something there. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, kind of tactile markers is already a thing on the Native Instruments DJ controllers. There's a bit of research being done into multi-line braille displays and how they can be used, for example, to
Hmm.
communicate, in Pro Tools or any other DAW. You've got your status bar at the top, which has your tempo, your timeline, place, and that kind of
Right,
thing. To have all that information under your fingers
right,
would be a real shortcut for a lot of blind users, I
for
think.
sure, for
But yeah,
sure.
the research needs to be done properly. But yes, cool. So we don't have time for questions about your DJing, but I'm just going to wrap up with two questions in the chat. So they're both from Kevin. So Kevin is asking how the industry has responded to Ramped initially. Any kind of positive outcomes? Any pushback?
The industry has actually responded very positive, surprisingly positively. I didn't realize. But I think the reason why is because of the fact that, again, we're industry professionals, speaking to industry professionals as opposed to activists. And so I think they're liking that, while we want them to get it right, we're not beating them over the head. And they like our approach. They like that we are culture first as opposed to pity and medical and all of that. So yeah, it's been very well received. We're just really continuing to look to grow and make more partnerships and really become an established situation. Yeah.
Hi, Lachi. It's
Hey,
Kevin. I spoke to you maybe about 3 years ago when you came on the Cultural Frontline on the BBC. You were
sure.
one of my first guests that came on when I joined the BBC. So great to see that
Yay.
it's all going well. Yeah, my last question is what have you guys got planned next for Ramped?
Ooh, well, I don't want to give too much away until you buy me a drink, but um, well, we're
Anything you
real.
can say.
Okay. We really, one of the big things that went really well last year was our songwriting retreat. So what we did was we had a bunch of our professional members get with world-class songwriters and producers to make hits that we then pitched to supervisors, labels, places like Netflix, etc. And it went off really, really well for not only just the songwriters and producers involved, but also for the folks we were pitching to. So we're having a big conversation with a large sort of major publisher now that wants to get involved in that, which we're really, really excited about. But next, in terms of next, as in the next couple of weeks, we are doing a really, really fun booth at NAMM just kind of celebrating accessibility. We're going to be right by the MIDI Association tables and booths. We're having a big brunch. This is really big for us because this is going to be Ramped's first time at NAMM, and we're going to be showcasing accessibility, having an accessibility brunch, and also having a performance on the MIDI stage of different artists with disabilities. And so this is all at NAMM, and so we're really, really excited about it. It has been the biggest headache to put together, but I think we're finally on the other side of the hump there. And then as well, we have a few Ramped members, including myself, who have worked on Grammy-nominated projects that are Grammy-nominated this year. And so we're having a cute little celebration there for that. But I think the big next thing is NAMM. But the big thing for 2026 is going to be having this large songwriting retreat with this major publisher that we're very excited about. But then other than that, it's about expanding our consultation and training clients and some of our walkthrough clients. So we also offer walkthroughs. If a venue wants to try to get it right or do it better, we help them put together a checklist by having folks with different disabilities walk through their venue. This is something that I think Attitude is Everything does over in the UK. But we don't have government funding because government doesn't care about anything right now, but that's a different conversation. So we offer it. And so we're hoping to just get more clients, blow up a little bigger. And of course, we're working with some of the largest names in the industry. And so what we do is we charge those bigger, larger firms a little bit more so that we can charge the smaller guys a little bit less.
Great. Well, lots of stuff in the pipeline. That's very exciting.
Absolutely. And great to hear from you again.
Yeah, you too.
Well, yeah, looking to the future, I think that's a great place to wrap up, actually. We've filled all of the time. So thank you very much, everyone, for all of your great questions. And Larchie, thank you so much for answering them so eloquently. Yeah, your positivity is infectious. I've really, really enjoyed tonight. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so very much for having me. And Jay, if you'll allow, I would love to get a link or whatever over to you for that discount for any of the folks who are Sound Without Sight to be able to join Ramped. And just really happy to be here with you folks. And thank you so much for listening. And I'll also give you a pre-order to the book link as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I will circulate that in our next newsletter. So I'm just going to play us out. You mentioned earlier Life on Hard as one of your favourite productions. So yes, have a lovely rest of day or night, everyone. And this is Life on Hard.
See, this really ain't that hard. Win big playing Life on Hard. Came late, ended up in charge. Cause this really ain't that hard. Big boss, and we do it for the cause. That sauce with no hair star. On top, and it ain't my fault. Cause this really ain't that hard. We keep the vest clean.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Sound Without Sight podcast. Sound Without Sight is a community-driven online hub collating resources and opportunities to enable blind and partially sighted musicians and audio engineers to break down access barriers. Why not share some accessibility solutions you've found on our Knowledge Hub? You can learn more and get involved at soundwithoutsight.org. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, please consider making a donation to support the project. You can do so at soundwithoutsight.org/donate.